So this one's very similar to the ones we've done in the past. We're going to start with our multiplication here. 4 times 5x plus 3 gives us 20x plus 12. We have to remember this is a negative 2 here. So negative 2 times 3x minus 4 is a negative 6x plus 8. Negative 2 times negative 4 is a positive 8. And then we'll combine 20x and negative 6x is 14x. And the 12 and 8 make 20. 62. And then subtract 20. 14x equals 42. And then subtract 14. X equals 3. One last example, and then we're going to move on to a different type of equation for a while. Try that one in your notes quick. I can admit that this one isn't very nice. We're going to start on the left side of the equal sign. We have parentheses, nothing to do in them, so we're going to multiply. 3 times our 5x minus 1 is 15x minus 3. Next set of parentheses, it's negative 2 times 3x plus 4 is negative 6x minus 8. Next, we can combine 15x and negative 6x make 9x. Negative 3 and negative 8 make negative 11. So 9x minus 11. That's all we can do on the left side, so over to the right side. Multiply these parentheses by 5, so 5 times 2x plus 7 is 10x plus 35. This parentheses multiplied by 2, so 2 times x minus 3 is 2x minus 6. And we still have the plus 2 on the end. So we'll combine 10x and 2x, make 12x. 35, negative 6, and 2 make 31. Now we still have some work to do before we can start to solve. We have x on each side, so I'm going to get rid of the smaller one, which is the 9x. So I'm going to subtract 9x. We've got negative 11 equals 12 minus 9 is 3x plus 31. And then subtract 31. Negative 11 minus 31. Negative 42. And then what do? We divide by 3. Negative 42 divided by 3 is negative 14. Did anybody get to x equals negative 14? Okay.
I was close, but I had the 31 switch.
Ah, gotcha. Okay, well, we have looked at equations with fractions in them. I want to take a little bit closer look at them. I mean, we've done equations like this. Two-thirds x minus 1 3/4 equals 5 1/2. How did we solve that equation? Add 1 3/4 to both sides. So we're left with 2/3 x here. 5 1/2 plus 1 3/4. I'm going to leave you to verify that that comes out to be 7 1/4. Now what do we have to do? Divide by 2/3. So x equals 7 1/4 divided by 2/3 is 10 7/8. Again, I'll leave it up to you to do the math to verify that division. Any questions? We also looked at problems like this one. X over 3 plus x over 2 equals 15. And the way we approached it was like this. We made this 1/3 x and this 1/2 x equals 15. And then we combined them. 1/3 x plus 1/2 x. If we add 1/3 and 1/2, we'll get 5/6 x. Then we divided by 5/6. We would get x equals 18. But there's a different way we can approach that problem. And that is to multiply the whole problem by the least common denominator. Right now we have denominators of 3 and 2. What would the least common denominator be? 6. If I multiply that whole equation by 6, so I have 6 times x over 3. So I'm going to write that out. 6 over 1 times x over 3 would be 6x over 3, or 6x divided by 3 is just 2x. 6 times x over 2, so it's 6 over 1 times x over 2 is 6x over 2, or just 3x. Yeah. Equals, we do still have to take 6 times the 15, which is 90. So now we're going to combine. 2x and 3x make 5x equals 90, and then 5 by 5. X equals 18. We get the same answer we got before. Now, some might think it's easier to work with the fractions like we did up here. Others might think it's easier to multiply through by that common denominator and get rid of the fractions and solve. There are some problems where we don't have a choice. You have to get rid of those fractions. Like this one. Looking at this one, we have, oops, that's not supposed to be 36. That should be 3x there. We have denominators here of x, 6, and 3x. We're looking for the least common denominator. Now, this is the opposite of looking for least common factor, or greatest common factor. Greatest common factor, we're looking for a number smaller than each of them that would divide into them. Least common multiple, we're looking for a number bigger than all of them that they will divide into. So what number, this is technically a 1x here. For 1, 6, and 3, what is the smallest number that they'll all go into? It's one of the numbers, 6. The 12 would work, but they'll all go into 6. So we're going to use 6 for the numbers. For the variables, we use the highest power. What's the highest power of the variable? Well, just x to the 1, or just x. So 6x is our least common multiple here. So we're going to have to multiply this whole thing by 6x. So 6x times 3, that part's not so bad, 18x. 6x times 2 over x, we'll make this 6x over 1 times 2 over x. 6x times 2 is 12x. 1 times x is x. That divides out to be is 12. 6x times 5 over 6. So 6x over 1 times 5 over 6. 30x over 6, which divides out to be just 5x. I have the equal sign. 6x times 5 over 3x, so 6x over 1 times 5 over 3x. 6x times 5, 30x. 3x on bottom. Yeah, 30 divided by 3 is 10, and x divided by x divides out. So now this is reduced to a relatively simple equation to solve. We're going to go ahead and combine 18 and 5x. 23x plus 12 equals 10. And then subtract 12. 23x equals, what's 10 minus 12? Negative 2. Divided by 23. X equals negative 2 23. Any questions? I'm going to do one more example, then we'll have you try one. So here, we're looking for our least common denominator. So we've got 5, 2x, and 10. For the numbers, 5, 2, and 10, what is the smallest number that they all go into? 10. They'll all go into 10. You're thinking greatest common factor. 2 would be the greatest common factor for them. For the variables, x, we got to take the largest power. So x by itself is the largest power. Even though x only appears in one of them, it is in our least common multiple. On the opposite side, greatest common factor, it would have to be in all of them to be part of the greatest common factor. So you got to keep those two straight. So now, 10x times 2 is fairly simple. What's that going to be? 20x, right? Next, 10x times 3 over 5. So 10x over 1 times 3 over 5 is 30x over 5, which divides out to be positive 6x. 10x times a negative 7 over 2x. So 10x over 1. I'm going to put the negative up with the 7. So times negative 7 over 2x. 10x times negative 7 is negative 70x. 1 times 2x is 2x. That divides out. Well, the x's divide out. Negative 70 divided by 2. Negative 35. Equals, on the other side there, 10x times 9 over 10. 10x over 1 times 9 over 10. 10x times 9 is 90x. 1 times 10 is 10. That divides out to be 9x. Good. So now we have 20x plus 6x minus 35 equals 9x. What are we going to do? Combine 20x and 6x, make 26x minus 35 equals 9x. Now we have to get rid of one of the x's since we have an x on each side. We normally go after the smaller one, which is the 9x. In this case, I would say I'd probably subtract the 26x because there's nothing over there with the 9x, but let's stick to form. We'll get rid of the smaller one, the 9x. We're going to subtract 9x. What's left over there? Nothing, so 0. We have to remember to put that 0 in there. If you subtract 9x over here, 26x minus 9x is 17x. We still have negative 35. So 17x minus 35 equals 0. Now what do? Add 35. So 17x equals 35, and then divide by 17. X equals 35 divided by 17. I'm going to treat it as a fraction. 17 goes into 35 twice with 1 left over. 1/17. Good stuff? I'm going to have you guys try one. Give that one a shot in your notes. What is my least common multiple, least common denominator going to be? 10x. 20x would work. It would give you the same answer, just a little bit bigger numbers to work with. Oops, what happened there? Get back here. So 10x times 4, 40x. 10x times 6 over x. 10x over 1 times 6 over x is 60x over x, which divides out to be just 60. 10x times 2/5. 10x over 1 times 2 over 5 equals 20x over 5, which divides out to be 4x. Now I'm going to show you this. You could, if you looked at this, like here, you could divide out the x and just get 60 when you multiply. Here you could divide out the 5 and the 10 to get 2x times 2 is 4x. If you want to cross cancel here, you can. I'm just multiplying it out and dividing it out to make it simpler for you. But if you want to cross cancel, it can make your calculations a little shorter. If I were doing this on my own, that's the way I would do it, just to speed things up for me. So on the other side of the equal sign, 10x times 3 over 2x. 10x over 1 times 3 over 2x. I'll show you what I mean here. The x's can cross cancel. 2 and 10 are both divisible by 2 to give me 1 and 5. 5 times 3 is 15. This is just 15 over here. Or I could have multiplied it out and got 30x over 2x, which divides out to be 15. And then we combine. 40x and 4x is 44x. Still got plus 60 there, equals 15. And then subtract 60. 44x equals 15 minus 60 is negative 45. And we divide by 44. X equals negative 1 and 1/44. What do you think? Lovely? How about something like this? What would we do? Well, we're going to start with the parentheses. But now this is 5x times the parentheses. 5x times 3x is 15x squared. 5x times negative 7, negative 35x. We still got the positive 4 there. Can I combine anything over here? No, I can't. So on the other side, can I do anything to simplify it? No. Now you're looking at that, seeing x squared, thinking we've not solved anything with x squareds in it. Well, If you look closely, if I go to get rid of one of them, if I subtract 15x squared, I have to subtract 15x squared from the other side too. What happens? They cancel out. They disappear. So we have negative 35x plus 4 equals negative 10x minus 21. Now there is a way, if the x squared doesn't disappear, we can solve an equation with x squared in it in a couple of different cases. Right now, pretty much all the time, the x squareds will disappear, except for one special case, which I'll show you in a minute. So now here we got an x on each side. We need to get rid of one. Which one is smaller? Careful. Technically negative 35 because of the negatives. Now we can get rid of either one. We're going to work with negatives no matter what. Let's get rid of the 10x. We're going to add 10x because it's a negative 10. So this is negative 21 over here all by itself. Adding 10x here, negative 35 plus 10 is a negative 25x plus 4. Now what? Subtract 4. Now be careful with this one. Negative 21 minus 4 is negative 25. And then divide by negative 25. X equals 1. All that work for x equals 1. Kind of similar to that last one, we might have something like this. X squared minus 3x plus 7 minus, or x squared minus 4 equals 7. Now again, we see the x squareds. And you can probably see the x squareds are going to subtract out. They're going to disappear. That's not the difficulty. The difficulty here is dealing with the other numbers because we are subtracting a negative 4. So the simpler way to deal with this, just like we did with our other parentheses, is to treat this as though it's a negative 1 times that parentheses. So up here we still have the x squared minus 3x plus 7. This is going to be negative 1 times x squared is negative x squared, or negative 1x squared if you want to. Negative 1 times negative 4 is a positive 4. And now we can combine x squared and negative x squared. Cancel out. We've got a negative 3x, 7 and 4, get positive 11. And then we'll subtract 11. So 7 minus 11 is negative 4. And then divide by negative 3. There you go. So x equals negative 4 divided by negative 3 is a positive 1 1/3. Now I said that there is one special case where we can solve for an x squared with what we know and not have to do anything really complex. And I'll show you what that is. Let's see here. That's not gonna work. There. Looking at this, there are three things that have happened to x. X was first squared to the power of 2, then it was multiplied by 2, then 3 was subtracted. So we're going to reverse those in opposite order. Last piece that was put on was subtracting 3, so we're going to add 3. So 2x squared equals 50. Then we're going to divide by the 2. So the 2 is gone, that's x squared. 50 divided by 2 is 25. And then square root. Square root of x squared is x. Square root of 25 is 5. Got to be careful. Negative 5 is also a solution. Okay. When you take a square root, you always have one positive, one negative answer. We're not going to see too many of those quite yet. There's a new quiz due tomorrow, Friday, by 11:59 p.m. And new homework for next Tuesday. I think you guys have suffered enough for the night.